you remember being a kid creating entire worlds with your friends, making up new games with new rules, or crafting the most epic storylines in the entire world with action figures, just going back and forth, being in your imagination, having the most fun of your entire life with using just your imagination? The spark of pure creativity, creating something of nothing. It's the instinct that all children have, but for some reason, we all lose it when we get older. Why? I mean, genuinely, why do we lose that intensive imagination that we have when we were kids? I actually think it's deeper than that. The more important question might be, how is society actively killing our creativity? And more importantly, what can we do to reclaim it? I mean, who does not want to feel like they were when a kid, sitting down on their floor, playing with action figures, having the best time of their entire lives? I think it honestly comes down to 7 principles that are rooted in us, starting with school. With school, they prioritize memorization and standardized test taking as opposed to critical thinking. The emphasis is always on you have to get the right answer. You have to use our method to get to said answer. That entire system is dedicated to making you think the way that they want you to, in terms of there is one solution. You should not be thinking out of the box. I think the second one is just the cultural norms that society actually rewards people for fitting in and fitting into the predefined roles rather than trying to explore the unique talents or unconventional paths. I remember when I stopped going to high school and I wanted to start a business, every single person almost looked down upon me and thought that it was the most crazy thing in the entire world. And then 3 years later, when you have a business and you start to have employees and you are making quite a bit of revenue, people say, well, that is genius, teach me what you did. But when you're doing it, everyone says you're a fucking idiot. For me, I stopped going to high school and I got some guy's logo tattooed on my leg, flew on my first ever flight across the country from Boston to Arizona to go meet this guy and ask him, what do I have to do for work to work for you? I mean, that is so far outside of the cultural norms, and you are looked down upon for doing things like that, saying, dude, you're joining a cult. You are a fucking idiot that's going to be getting butt raped by an older guy. I mean, that's quite literally what I heard. And this leads to the third thing of the fear of failure. I mean, this is rooted to us from the school system where you should be scared to fail. I mean, you're conditioned to avoid mistakes at all costs. In fact, don't even try at the risk of failing or looking stupid or being wrong. Failure is the most critical part of the creative process, or anything, using your imagination or taking risk. I mean, it's so looked down upon to take a risk and do something that is unconventional. It just leads to every single person being the exact same, thinking the exact way. People are more concerned what other people think of them than what they think about the world. The reality is, I don't care about most people. I don't like most people. Most people don't like most people. You like a certain few select people. So why the fuck do you care what everyone else thinks and could care more about their judgment of you than what you think? Well, most people don't actually think. They don't spend time thinking. This leads to the next one of just constantly being around noise at all times. You are just being sucked into your screen time on your phone, on your laptop. People are competing for your attention at all times. If you're in the car, you're listening to music. You are constantly scared of being alone in your own thoughts because you're probably terrified of what you might find. That there's nothing that goes on in there because you never asked yourself any questions and you don't really have any opinions on anything because you've never actually thought about anything. I'm saying this not to call somebody out, but because I've done this in the past. I mean, until you actually sit in silence for 5 hours, you don't realize how fucking little you know about anything. I mean, now I never listen to music for the most part. I mean, music is great and it sounds good and it spikes your dopamine or whatever, but if I'm driving, I prefer to raw dog it. I prefer to go no music. I like to go on walks. When I'm in the gym, I try not to listen to music. My job is spending most of my day on my laptop, so I'm always consuming information, but the most important part is expressing it back out, which actually leads to the next thing of the overemphasis on productivity. This is a trap that I fell in for a long period of time. Let's go back to when I was a senior in high school and I made the conscious decision to stop attending school, and instead I was going to study macroeconomics with the hopes of apprenticing myself under this guy, George Gammon, the one that I have his logo tattooed on my leg. My strategy was I read every single macroeconomics and business book I could possibly get my hands on. I was was listening to podcasts and Audible all day, every day. The second I woke up to the second I went to bed, I was either listening to podcasts, listening to Audibles, or reading books. I dedicated my life to it, and I was desperate, and I thought that that was the right answer. I thought that the more I consumed, the more that I would learn, but that was 100% not true. What I didn't realize is that's not actually how people learn and digest information and make their thoughts their own ideas. You have to express those ideas back out. I mean, the most powerful thing is actually teaching someone else. But if you're reading something or listening to it, you're only consuming a fraction of the information. So you have to take that information and make it your own. And then I started to text myself ideas that I was getting. And then I started to make a macroeconomic YouTube channel with my buddy Justin where we would talk about these things, Macro After Dark. And then we started a philosophy channel because it was fun. Our other one got banned because we were talking about things that the thought leaders didn't like, I guess. But people are overemphasizing just always doing something. Like you just always have to do something. And that's just simply not true. Now, my business is I help a lot of really large businesses like Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. This guy, Ken McElroy, who has 10,000 apartments. These guys in Tijuana who have the #1 cancer and stem cell facility in the entire world. I mean, properly large businesses. And I'm helping them with their organic social media, trying to help them grow so they can get more customers or lower the cost to acquire customers. Some of the most productive times during my day now are when I'm doing nothing. Most people on Instagram, what I see is you wake up, you start your journaling, you start your gratitude, you fucking make your bed, you work out, you do your 13 minutes of breathing, you fucking do your cold ice bath challenge, whatever the hell it is. I mean, all these things that make a very minuscule difference towards your, let's say, your mental state. I mean, I notice if I just sit down and fucking stare at a wall and try and think through my thoughts, or go for a walk, or just go for a ride with no music, or just fucking think, that has the most effectiveness on my work. I mean, I used to play a lot of chess, and you don't just rush into every single move. I played a lot of speed chess where I would do minute matches with 1 to 2 second increments every time you would move. It doesn't really matter. But the strategy is just different for when you're playing such a short game versus if you're playing an hour-long game, because you can think things through for such a long period of time. And for my business, I think most young people get in this trap of thinking that this is a 1-minute game and I have to move as quickly as possible and I always have to be doing something at every single second. But that's not true. I mean, this is a 30-year project. So you can spend some time to think through the next move. You don't have to just rush into something. But when you do make a decision, fucking make the decision. The next one is just social media and the impact of fucking being stuck on our phones all day, every single day. That is completely killing your creativity and your imagination. If you are constantly consuming, it is impossible to think of new ideas. It just is. You can get the short snippet answer of David Goggins, that conclusion, but you don't know what goes into that conclusion. I would argue that that is so much more important. If you were going to make an argumentative opinion or argument on a certain subject, it matters more on your thought process on how you get to the conclusion than the conclusion itself, because then you could argue both sides and you actually understand the point of view. It's not just, hey, this person said this and I'm going to repeat it, which is pretty much what every single person does. I am no better. Society conditions people to consume more than they create. I have a question. How many times do you just pick up your phone out of pure addiction and not fucking, like, you don't even know why you're picking it up? This happens to me constantly throughout the day. Just the constant noise of our outside surroundings, of always never being able to be in our thoughts. I noticed today when I was driving, I mean, I didn't have any music on, but I felt the need. Who should I call? Who should I call? Who should I call to fucking break the silence in my head? So I called my dad, I called my mom. Then I'm like, okay, I called them. What's next? And then it's just silence. But if you get over that hump of a few minutes of silence, that imagination that comes back, like when you were a kid playing with the action figures. I had my WWE action figures. I have this entire fucking movie being played inside my head. I was in charge of everything. I was creating the rules. I was doing whatever the fuck I wanted because I created it with my own imagination. And every kid did that, but we lose that ability when we get older and we can't fucking dream anymore. This really bothers me because I've seen that I have been a symptom of society killing the imagination of myself. I desperately have tried to crawl my way back, and I can promise you life is a million times better when you're not as addicted to your stupid phone or caring about the judgment of the outside world. I mean, it doesn't fucking matter at the end of the day. It really doesn't. And when I came to that realization, life honestly just got so much easier, and it's been pretty recent development.